Chapter 9 The Blue Ones. Calder and Petra found 3 other paintings of the woman in the yellow jacket. In one, she was wearing a pearl necklace and looking into a mirror. In another, she was playing a lute. In the third, she was sitting, writing at a table, and a maid was handing her what looked like a letter. "You've never seen any of these before?" Calder looked worried. Never. Petra had taken off one of her earrings and rolled it around on the floor. "So how did you dream about something you didn't know existed?" "I wonder," Petra said slowly, "if paintings that float into your mind on their own are kind of like flying frogs or disappearing people." You mean your dream might have been part of something bigger?" Calder jumped up and got a piece of paper and a pencil. He handed them to Petra. "Maybe we should start keeping a record of unexplained stuff." Petra ducked her head happily over the paper. "Fine." She began with Charles Fort, chief questioner, philosopher, guide. "Hey, there's something else. Did you know I made that F costume because I was thinking of F for Fort?" "We'll include that." Calder told Petra about his box, explaining the reason why he happened to be looking at the book. "I wonder what made me remember that old thing, anyway. If it hadn't popped into my mind, I wouldn't have recognized the geographer at Miss Sharp's, and then I would have never read about Vermeer or recognized your costume." "It's Miss Husey's fault," Petra said, delighted. "It all started with her find some art assignment. We found it all right." They spent the next 10 minutes trying to figure out what happened when Petra wrote. Calder writes about box with geographer on it. Same day that Petra finds low, writes about it, and then dreams about woman. Calder and Petra have lunch, talk about Fort. Calder visits Miss Sharp's and sees geographer, hears about Vermeer. Number 4, Calder takes a book out of library. Number 5, Petra and Calder make costumes. Petra thinks about Vermeer. Calder thinks about Charles Fort. Number 6, Halloween. Calder recognizes Petra's costume. Calder was flipping back and forth in the book. This doesn't tell you too much about Vermeer's life. Do you think we should do some research? I've been wondering if there's some kind of secret code that no one's ever noticed before. I mean, why so many pearls and pens and buttons and thingies?" "Good thinking," Petra grinned. "And maybe there's some other crazy connections with Charles Fort." Calder went on. "Some facts we might be missing. We could look in the high school library tomorrow." "Great." Calder stood up, reached into his pocket. He stirred the pentomino pieces around and pulled one out. "V for Vermeer." He smiled in a distracted way. Petra looked puzzled. "A 1 in 12 chance? Think it's a coincidence?" On the way to school the next morning, Petra asked Calder about the V for Vermeer business. "I told you about the woman. Now you can tell me about these pentominoes. And don't say they're just for making rectangles." "They help me figure things out," began Calder. He looked sideways at Petra. "Promise not to laugh." "Why should I? What could be weirder than my dream?" "Well, it seems like the pentominoes kind of talk to me. I'll get the feeling that they want to tell me something, and so I'll grab one, and a word will just pop into my head." Petra was looking at Calder with interest. "I know it sounds like a superstitious game, and probably it is, but you're right about Charles Fort. He makes you look carefully at stuff you might have ignored before." "I think it's cool." Calder smiled gratefully at Petra. He should have known she'd understand. At 3:30 that afternoon, they were sitting behind a stack of books in the library. "Let's begin with dates, okay?" Petra writing in a neat purple ink, starting a new page, and the heading, Facts about Vermeer. Calder looked at the book in front of him. "Whoa, Petra, get this. Vermeer was baptized on Halloween in 1632. That was the first fact about his life. Kind of spooky, don't you think? We started writing about him on the same day that his name was first recorded. There were more than 3.5 centuries between." Here it is, Calder went on. Johannes, son of Renier, Jans, and Digna Baltines. Wait, spellings. Calder paused for a moment while Petra copied the names. He went on. His father was an innkeeper in Delft, but was also a weaver who manufactured a fine satin cloth called kaffa. Vermeer was an innkeeper too, and then an art dealer. Let's see. When he was 21, he married Katrina Bolonis. Later that year, he was registered as master painter at the Guild of St. Luke. Became a director of the same guild several times, had 11 children, had died in 1675 at the age 43. Petra was writing madly. Calder turned the page. It looks like he died owing money, and that he wasn't really famous until about 100 years ago. He's mysterious. I mean, everything about his life is. There aren't any records of how he got started, or what money his family lived on. Historians don't know where he worked, or who the woman and the men in this painting were. Whether they were friends or family, or what. I've read that before. Almost nothing at all is known about him as a person. Calder looked up. That's so strange, don't you think? I wonder if someone destroyed his notebook or letters. Petra glanced at Calder. It doesn't seem suspicious and sad, don't you think? These magical scenes that no one will ever know more about. Calder was reading again. You know what else? He only signed some of his paintings. I wonder why. Calder turned the page. I've never done that, he muttered under his breath. Let's find out more about the painting in your dream, he went on. Here it is. A lady writing. It's in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. The thing she was wearing is a morning jacket, and it had white fur around the collar and sleeve. Those big earrings are either some kind of fancy glass or pearls. Can you believe it? The oysters that made those would have been the size of a football. That's a quilling pen, of course. The same chair with the lion's head knobs turned up in other images. The same for the jewelry, furniture, even maps and paintings on the walls. I wonder if this is Vermeer's home. Must have been hard work with so many kids, Petra said, thinking about how noisy just 5 could be. Is anything making sense here? Calder asked. Well, there's the Halloween thing. That's a pretty weird coincidence. But is there anything else we're missing? A pattern? Numbers? It seemed like there's too much connections here, Petra said slowly. Like Miss Sharp knowing about both Vermeer and Charles Fort. You know, Miss Sharp, me reading Miss Sharp's book and having that dream right when you were reading about Vermeer, and then the costumes we both made. Do you suppose that ideas overlap like this all the time, and people just don't realize it? Maybe. Outside the library, they walked several yards in silence. Calder pulled 2 packages of peanut M&Ms out of his coat and passed one to Petra. Thanks, she said, surprised. What's your favorite? He asked. The blue ones. Hey, how about the blue M&Ms symbolize secrecy? We can start a collection, and we can each eat one at a special time as a sign of our determination to figure this out. It'll be kind of our private thing. Hearing himself, Calder stopped. Petra quickly added, it represents us, Charles Fort and Vermeer. Perfect. They decided to save the blue M&Ms in Calder's box and keep it under his bed. Petra would hold on to the notebook. At the end of the Harper Avenue, they stopped, both ate an M&M, agreeing that the color blue had a rare and mysterious taste. End of chapter 9. Just so you guys know, what they're saying about Vermeer, the fact that we know very little about his life, is all true. The more that we study him, the more mysterious he really does get. Because we don't have a lot of first-hand data like letters and diaries and those type of things. We really know very, very little bit about this artist. So not only is this a fictional story that you guys are following, there's a lot of factual information in it. So I hope you guys are enjoying the story so far. Don't forget to answer those questions.